Okay guys, let's check out a pretty rare watch when it comes to Seikos. I mean, you can still get them. They're kind of available, but you're going to pay a premium on new, old stock, and even on the used market, they still hold their value pretty good. This is the quote 6105 or Willard reissue. This was the one that came out in 2019, I think somewhere between March and July. This actual watch was videoed by Bruce Williams in July of 2019. I'll put a link to his video. He goes into some pretty good detail on it. But this is the JDM version, which doesn't really mean much because they released it worldwide. There was 2,500 of them. This is number 149 of the 2,500, but there's two different part numbers. So this one actually falls under the part number of sbdx031, which I think I have a hang tag here somewhere. Yeah, right here. So this was a JDM model. So there's the hang tag, but they're the same whether you got the sbdx031 or you picked up the sla033. It's the same watch and they still both fall under the 2,500 limited run. It's just the earlier ones were released first in Japan under the sbdx031 for their domestic market. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, well, we might as well talk about price real quick. When these launched in 2019, mid-2019, they had a retail price of $4,250, and they sold out quick. So $4,250 sold out fast. It's more of a one-to-one reissue of the 6105 than the more modern, like this guy here, the SPB183 or whatever variant you're looking at. These are technically smaller, and it's funny that they kind of, well, let's finish up the price thing. Used, like this one used, you can pick them up for around 3,500 bucks. If you want new old stock, I'm finding them over what the original retail is, about 4,700-ish. So what I was going to say though, it's kind of funny that the more affordable, what do you call it? Reissue of the 6105, I don't know what the heck we're going to call it, is, I guess, modernized. But typically when you modernize a reissue, the watch is larger than its older one. In this case, it's actually a little bit smaller, whereas this guy here is closer to the one-to-one, is actually just over, it's, well, almost 45. It's like, on the very tips, it's like 44.9. So even if you called it like 44 and a half, it's still 44 and a half, right? By like 48 and a half, and then 13 mil thick. And then it has this oddball 19 mil lug width, which the original one had as well. And then a 6.8 millimeter crown. Those are almost identical to the measurements from the original 6105. So say 44 and a half by 48 and a half versus this one being at 42 by 46. And this is the one that I think a lot of people tend to gravitate toward, is this one. Also because of the price. I mean, these aren't cheap. Retail on these are like 1,400 bucks, but you can pick them up used for, 1,000 or less. So, and they have great bracelets. This one did not come with a bracelet. This one came with a, I don't know, like a real rubber feel, very lint catchy, tropic style strap, which Homer sent this over. So big thanks to Homer. He must have picked it up off from Bruce at some point. I lose track of us flippers, but so Homer sent this in. But like many people, I think the factory strap ends up coming off. It's a fine strap. It is a very well-made strap. But Uncle Seiko makes this one, which is way less lint catchy, and it's still a really nice, good quality rubber strap. And you can see Uncle Seiko on the tang or the buckle there, and double rubber keepers, which I prefer over the metal keeper. So this is the strap that Homer wore it on. Okay, now let's get back into the watch. So the kind of elite thing on this is that it's using the 8L35 movement. So it's a 4 hertz movement, so it beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, has 26 joules, and Dia shock. Dia shield. The case on this has Dia shield, so it's still supposed to help with scratches and stuff, which is debatable. And this has Dia shock. It has a Spron hairspring. It has a 50-hour power reserve. The 8L35 movement is based So it has some ties to the Grand Seiko movement. It's based off a Grand Seiko 9S55, which is, both of them are hand assembled by the Seiko master watchmakers, both the 8L35 and the Grand Seiko movements. But they do a little bit more work on the Grand Seiko movements. The 8L35 goes like maybe 80%, right? And then they're like, okay, that's good enough, stuff it in the diver, and let's get that out of here so we can focus on the high horology stuff. So, but they do regulate it. I threw it on the time grapher, and even after a couple of years, so it's been a couple of years this watch has been worn and used, and not like everyday use, but it got worn by a few people. This is running at plus minus 0 seconds. So not only is it regulated, it's not confirmed or anything like that, but they do regulate these, but it's also a consistent performer. So, which is not something you're going to get out of like your 4R or 6R or whatever movement. They have some pretty decent variables when it comes to those movements, where these ones are just a little more fine-tuned, or a lot more fine-tuned. Let's see, 120 click bezel on this. So this is where things kind of differ from the original 6105, is the use of modern materials, gaskets, and sealing systems and everything like that are far superior on this versus the 6105. But this one has 120 click bezel. If I'm not mistaken, the 6105 had just a friction fit bi-directional bezel. I could be wrong on that, but if my memory serves me. Nice, smooth. I mean, this is a little bit, again, a little bit more refined than what you would find on the other Willards. And they line up, so that's good too, right? Maybe a little more attention to detail. And let's see, let's take a look at the case back. You have a screw down case back. It's labeled, limited edition and actually numbered, 149 of 2500. This has some really good polishing on it. Obviously you can see, I mean, it's smudged up a little bit, and there's some scratches and stuff. I mean, it was worn, as it should be. Now, I'm not sure on the bezel insert on this. Now, see, it's got a couple scratches on it. So it's not ceramic. It's whatever Seiko does with their coating, and it makes it look like it's ceramic, and it's definitely scratch resistant, because, this technically from the other wear marks on it should be a little more scratched up, and it's just not. There's like one there. It's held up really well, actually. Really nice full polished handset on this versus the handset like on the less expensive ones are a little more universally used. They're still great handsets, but these ones are just cleaner, better cut, smoother surfaces, just another level of refinement on a diver, which isn't really necessary, but appreciated. It does say Japan down on the dial there, 8L35. So that's always nice to see what movement they're using on there. I do want to point out real quick, in case you didn't know, on this one has a screw down crown, but this one says lock. So that's just paying homage to its heritage of the 6105 did not have a screw down crown. Rather, it had a locking crown. So, which I think this one's, any of you 6105 owners out there, if you could comment on this, I think the locking crown on the 6105 actually went counterclockwise, but they didn't want to put it, maybe the arrow on that like too close, because they're saying lock and screw down clockwise. So on the 6105, I think it said lock and the arrow was pointed the other way. And what you had to do, let me zoom out so I can do this. So this one obviously is an actual screw down crown, which the integrated crown guards on this they make it kind of tricky to get at, even though it's cut out there for, recessed in there so you can get it. But so like you have it here, and of course you can hack it and adjust the time and all that good stuff. But then after on the 6105, after you would set the time, you'd basically push it in, and you would push the crown in, and then like quarter turn this way, and it would catch this little post in there, and it would lock the crown from being popped out. So most watches, unless they have like more gaskets, screwing down the crown isn't really increasing the water resistance as much as it is stopping the crown from being popped out and allowing water or whatever to get in. So it just stops it from being operated. Some of them have more gaskets, and that's part of the sealing process, but you know, when you're talking like a 200-meter watch, water-resistant watch, that's usually not the case. And then on the 6105, it was obvious that wasn't the case, because you basically pushed it down, quarter turned, I think counterclockwise, and it would just lock the crown into place. And then it was so well protected that it really shouldn't incur any sort of loosening of operation. Although they did fail, I guess. There's some stories of them failing, but regardless, that's probably way too much information about a watch that we're not even looking at. But it's relevant, I guess, because this one pays homage to the 6105. Let's pop this on wrist, 7¼ inch wrist. I'm pretty sure I've had a 6105 on the channel, or a version of it. So you can see, I mean, it's a larger watch, you know, and I think there's a new one coming out that's also this size, another reissue of a reissue. So for guys with, you know, a little bit larger wrist, or just a preference for the larger watch, I think this one wears good and it looks good, but I still kind of actually like that one a little bit more, the 42, as far as how it fits and the price. The price is definitely more appealing, but this movement's crazy good. So it all depends on your preference. And this one will hold value. You know, it's definitely not dropping percent-wise as bad as some of those other ones. And it's more true to the original. So if all that stuff matters to you, then look at picking up one of these. You can't really go wrong with limited edition. Even this one's limited edition. So over time, this one should even do better as well. So for reference, there's what that one looks like on wrist, if you can kind of commit that to memory. It's going to look a little bit different because it's on bracelet versus the strap. But I got to say, I actually kind of prefer this one on wrist. But 7¼ inch wrist, if you have like 7½, 8 inch or something like that, you might want this a little bit larger one. You can kind of see the difference there. The bracelet being on there kind of throws it off a little bit, but it's definitely larger. All right, let's kill the lights and check the lume. I've rambled way too long, 12 minutes on this guy already. So, killer lume. So, excellent lume. They maybe even did a better job on the lume, which wouldn't surprise me. Just the attention to detail at every aspect. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next vid.